Hi, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Cantey, and this is another episode of Living Enlightened Every Day. Today, we're asking, are you living your life or are you living your story? Let's find out. As we explore, are we living our life or are we living our story? It kind of makes you wonder what's the difference? What's living life and what is living our story? And I'm just gonna put it out there that life is unfolding all the time. It is living itself as us, as who and what we are. We are the expression of God. We are how God shows up. It's God living its life as us. So when I ask, are we living our life or are we living our story? Life unfolds spontaneously. Life is amazing. Life has no past, no precedent. Life has no future, nothing to create for us to create. It is unfolding moment by moment. It is always new. It is always exciting. It is pretty amazing, honestly, when we're present in this moment to live our life. And how do we know that we're not living our life? When we're living our story, there's an idea, a concept about who we are, about what's happened to us, about our self identity. It's that story that we tell ourselves about who we are, that I'm this old, that I'm too old to get this kind of a job, or that I don't have the education to do that, or that I never was able to have that, or that life is against me and not for me. We just have story after story. We think that I am unlovable or I am not enough. We have those ingrained ideas from childhood. We think that we don't fit in or we don't belong. And it's hysterical because you are God, the expression of God itself. You are spirit made flesh. You are the life of God. You can't fit in anymore if you tried, right? You are not this body. The body is like the tip of the iceberg. Yeah, people look at me and they see a woman. I'm okay with that. People look at me and they see a certain age. I'm okay with that. Whatever you see, that's okay. But who I am has no story. Who I am is the unfoldment of the expression of God moment by moment. And what that allows me to do is love my life and live my passion. When we are living our life, we are alive in every moment. We're awake in the moment. We are aware of the miracles that are unfolding all around us. And I'm not talking about anything crazy. I'm not saying, anything crazy. I'm talking about the lizards chasing each other on the patio. I'm talking about the dog chasing its tail. I'm talking about the butterflies going from bottle brush, flower to bottle brush flower. It's like the beauty is all around us. When I see my son, who's almost 21, and his expressions and his songs and his singing and his girlfriend and his life, like it's like I just get to live through all these expressions all around me. It's almost like I have these tentacles that are reaching out and they're in everything when I am living life, right? Because this is life unfolding without a story, without an idea, without a concept. And how do we know we're living our story? That's when we say, oh, I have to do this, and I only do this, and I can't do that because of this and this and this. We tell the most amazing stories, don't we? And the fact is, we all have a story of separation, because psychologically, this is not mystically, but psychologically, we have a story of separation because we were all separated from our mother. And we have another story of separation because as we were infants, if we were taken care of to a certain degree as an infant, our basic needs were met of being held. We have a uh, we are thriving. In other words, we have enough food, we have enough shelter, we have enough um, love and attention. Then we are separated again as a very young toddler. When we start really realizing I am not everything, I am separate, I am different. They're not feeling what I'm feeling. They're not giving me what I want or think that I need as this little 2 and 3-year-old. So we have these different times of separation in our life, and they're meant to build this strong sense of independence in a way. So it's this psychological, physical independence. And it's beautiful because I get to now look at you, the dog, my son, my family. I get to see another expression and not just one, not just this. Right? God is appearing as this multiplicity and diversity of objects, of experiences. And it's only an appearance because there is only one life living itself. I love that quote from Jean Klein. It's like no one lives. No one lives. It's just life living. Life is living. No one separate person is living separately from God. But we get to absolutely enjoy this seemingly confined and limited perspective. But when we get stuck in it, when we think that is who we are, we're stuck in our story. We're stuck in our limitation. We think, oh, the mind is limited. I can't think of those things that Einstein thought of. I'm not very good at math. That's part of my story. I have no interest in being good at math. So my mind is relatively finite around that in the way I use my mind in that particular instance. When we think that we are limited like that in all these areas, that I am this limited body, that I am this limited mind, then we experience those limitations as who we are. When we think I'm not like them, I don't fit in, I don't belong, I'm not enough, I'm not lovable, because I didn't get this when I was 3 or when I was 5 or when I was 15. Because when I was in my first marriage, I was treated this way or that way. And it's this ultimate victim mentality, And it's okay because when we were children, we were, psychologically speaking, victims. We didn't choose our name. We didn't choose our where our parents lived or put us to school. We think we didn't choose. I'm going to leave it there, but psychologically we can say we didn't choose. And so we create, or we understand this victim mentality. It's like, oh, this happened to me and that happened to me. This is something I experienced. This is something I overcame. And that's okay. It's part of our story. But if we leave it there, if we leave it at body and mind, we are limited because spirit, life, the universe is living itself in, through, and as us. And that is unlimited, eternal, timeless, spaceless. And we are that. In other words, our essential nature is that, which is what I talk about all the time. So when we are lifted, is that a good word? Lifted, or when we can use that. We can also use the idea of going prior to the mind, prior to the body, deep within. Jesus said, enter the closet, close the door and remember the truth of your being. Okay, he didn't say that, I'm paraphrasing, but it's that sense that when we know who we are, we can live our life without precedent, without stories, without those limited ideas of what we experienced. We are not what we experienced. We are not that. That is something that happened at one point in our lives. We can name one memory. If it happened again, it was another point in our lives. It is not continuing to happen. It is not something that has never stopped happening. If it has never stopped happening, if it was always part of our life, that would be our essential nature. But it didn't. It came and it went. What is really limiting us is our thoughts about those experiences. Those experiences have come and gone. They don't exist. We couldn't go back to them if we wanted to. But what do? We recall them in our mind and we relive them in our mind. And what does that do to our heart? Our heart closes, our heart contracts because we didn't like it then. Guess what? We don't like it now. We don't like reliving that experience. We don't like reliving the time that my mother told me I don't know, wasn't good enough to have this, or I didn't earn that, or I didn't make the cheerleading squad, or I didn't make the A and get to go to Disney World. Like all these things. But if I recall that over and over again, and if I have that identity that I am not enough, then I relive it constantly. So I am living my story of who I think I am. And in that story, I cannot be the eternal, timeless, loving, spacious space of God itself revealed in, through, and as this. We cannot serve both God and mammon. We cannot be in two places at one time. We cannot be in the past and our self identity and be our spiritual truth, our essence. We cannot. We can only be in one or the other. So, what do we do? Just guys hear me say this all the time. I used to think, and it's a legitimate path, change your thoughts. When the thoughts come up, I'm not lovable, I don't fit in, I don't belong. Look at yourself. Where don't you belong? Really, seriously, where don't you belong? If you're a vegan, you belong. I don't know what the percentage of vegans are in the world, but there's tons of them. In certain countries, it's a majority. If you're healthy, where do you belong? Healthy belongs pretty much everywhere. If you're old, where are there old people in the world? Let me think about that. Everywhere. We belong. We were created to belong. Even when we're just looking at our limited self identities, we belong. We fit in. We're not that unusual. There's a book written about us somewhere. We're a case study for some psychologist somewhere. It's laughable in a way. We're not that unique. And yet, and yet we are this magnificent, incredible expression of the divine that has never been created before. It will never be created again. That is incredibly unique, but that is in our wholeness. That is in our essential identity, our essential self. When we go back to those memories as past experiences, there are practices of love, of forgiveness, of gratitude. There is a practice of realizing that that is not who I am. That is something that happened to me. As a matter of fact, I have those practices in my book, Living Enlightened, the joy of integrating spirit, mind, and body. Those practices are how I realized what I realized, and then the words came afterwards. So for most of us, it's an experience, not an experience that comes and goes, not a limited or finite experience. It's an opening of the heart, an opening of the mind, an opening where life is living itself, and it's like, oh, oh, I see, I get it. Now I know who I am, and then we can kind of write about that experience. So the transformation is not in the words of a book. It's not in the words of this podcast. The transformation of the realization of who we are is closing the door, remembering the truth of our being, and we use practices or books, um, vision groups, prayer partners, whatever it is, to allow us to rest, to realize, to remember our true nature. And as we do this again and again, the the stories fall away. That false identity falls away. And what happens more and more is we're living our life in the present moment without the chatter, without the story, without the limited ideas, the limitations of the body and the limitations of the finite mind have no bearing on the unlimited nature of spirit as who we are, our essential nature. So I know I kind of bounced around a bit. So we can change our thinking. That's a legitimate step. Is like when we notice I am thinking, I don't belong. No one loves me. No one gets me. No one understands me because I am, and we spit out this list. It's like, is that the truth? Is that true? Am I that? Or is that just a story I've told from these experiences in my life that have come and gone? We can we can look at the times we were loved, we were adored, we were recognized, we were thanked, we were acknowledged, because we all have those. But we have chosen not to identify with those experiences, with those expansive experiences. We've decided we're not that magnificent. We're not that powerful. We're not that loving. We're not that capable. And so every time we think that, we say that, we contract into the body and into the finite mind. And that's just, I'm going to say, a choice. We can choose to become aware who is the one thinking those thoughts. I know that I'm thinking those thoughts because I'm here. I can think them. Look at them. It's like, there they are. It's like this. Ooh, there's one. There's another one. I'm not good enough. Wow. I don't even have to dissect it. I don't even have to figure out where that came from. I came from the when I didn't get the star on my paper. It came from not making the cheerleading squad. It came from not breaking my own record in the 100 IM when I was 8 years old. Like all these things, right? We can just say, I wasn't good enough. I didn't win the gold medal. I didn't win the blue ribbon. I didn't get into the advanced classes. All those things that we want to say, this is what happened to me, they're not happening now. They're not happening now. As a matter of fact, what's happening right now, when we just take a breath, what is right here, right now? All the love of the universe is right here, nowhere else. It's here now. You know, one of my favorite sayings is from Jesus, the teacher. He said, the kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of God is within. It's within. It's not out there. It's not here. It's definitely not the thoughts that come and go. It is within. And it is available now, in this moment, not in the thoughts of the past, not in the projections of the future. Those are the stories that we tell. Those are the stories that we relive and relive and relive. And they continue to perpetuate themselves until we change the story. So that is what I'm saying. That's a legitimate path. Change your thinking, change your life. And the next step after that is take no thought. Take no thought. That's usually translated, and forgive me, I didn't look it up. It's a gospel verse, Matthew, I think. I think it's in John too. Oh dear, I'll put it in the notes. Take no thought for what you will eat, for what you will drink, for how you will clothe yourself. Usually that's translated sometimes as don't be anxious. But it's meant to be take no thought. Stop thinking. Start living. Live your life. It is living you. It is bursting. It's just waiting to burst forth from you, and you will see God with the eyes of God. You will see wholeness from wholeness. You will see joy because you are joy. There's nothing else you can see in the present moment as your essential self, as life living itself. Everything else is a story. Everything else we tell ourselves is a story. So I just invite you this week, get off the story. How is it serving you? Even if you have a good story, y'all know I talk about this all the time. If you have a good story, and that's the commentary that's running around, and that's, if you have changed your thinking and you have changed your life, and now you have a better story to tell, now you're at the point where you watch the miracles unfold as you take no thought. When we stop identifying with this limited self, the limit when we think we have to make things happen in this world. It's been living itself for 13 billion years, and forever and ever, actually, eternally, which is not in time, time less, space less. But if we want to kind of look at another perspective from the body, from the eyes, from the senses, it is 13 billion years old and it's been unfolding itself without our help. There's nothing we need to do to make happen. There's nothing we need to do to hold mentally so that we can make something happen, so that we can make something right, so that we can protect ourselves. What can anybody take from you, created in the image and likeness of God itself? What can anybody take from you that would harm you? What could anybody do to you that has harmed you ever? You've never been hurt, harmed, or endangered. And if you, the body, the mind, the lower heart, has been hurt, harmed, or endangered, it happened. It was something that happened to you. It's something that happened to me. I experienced that, but I don't have to own that as my identity. It's a story. I can tell it, and I don't have to let it be who I am. So then we ask, who am I really? Who am I? Ah, resting in this eternal moment. There are no boundaries to who I am. There's no edge. There's nowhere that I stop being. There's no past. I can't pick myself up and walk, jump, leap, or dive into a past. And I can't do that with the future. I can't move myself into the future to prevent something from happening. all I can do is be this expanded heart, this expanded mind. We let go of the finite mind. It's beautiful. Helps me make my grandmother's favorite recipe, helps me drive a car, all these wonderful things. But when I want to know the truth of my being, turning within, remembering who I am, experiencing, this is it. This is who I am. Timeless, spaceless, faceless. If I couldn't look in the mirror, if you couldn't look in the mirror, who would you be? If there was no such thing as a mirror, who would you be? How old would you be if you could not look in the mirror? You wake up and you're just like, oh, yummy. You could be anything, anyone. Who would you be if you didn't know your past, if you had amnesia? Who would you be if there was some mechanism that you could not project this unknown past into an unknown future? Who would you be in this present moment? I invite you to experience that this week. Answer your own question, because the great teachers, the great masters have all answered it for us. We are eternal, unlimited, timeless, spaceless. We are love. We are life, living itself. So just let go of the story. Change the story. Live your life. Watch as these seeming miracles unfold. Live in the joy of living in the present moment. So I hope this inspires you to laugh, love, and live enlightened every day. If you like this, go ahead and hit like, hit subscribe, share it with a friend who is just waiting to step out of their story and live their life fearlessly, unconditionally, unbound by their own mind. Yes. Thank you. Namaste.